Hi, I'm Max Temkin, one of the co-creators of Cards Against Humanity, and this is Tabletop Deathmatch, a competition to find the next great tabletop game. Last year, over 500 people submitted their unpublished games to a panel of expert judges. 16 finalists came to Gen Con to pitch their games in person, and one of those games will win a first printing paid for by Cards Against Humanity and be named the champion of Tabletop Deathmatch.
My name is Steve Ewoldt, and I have What the Flock. What the Flock is a bird board game, and it uses small bird pawns to flock your birds and not be flock blocked by your opponents. I've probably been making games for 6 or 7 years, on and off, some years better than others. My son, who liked checking out the games that I was working on, couldn't play any of them because they were all a little too complex, a little too much stuff. So I designed What the Flock so he would have a game to play, and now I ended up liking it a lot more than he does, and my friends like it a lot more, so it's become a party game as well. My son he likes chess. He learned to play chess, and he's actually really good. And I hadn't played chess in probably 15 years, so he can actually beat me. You're gonna take that out, right? Because I don't want anybody knowing that. But the truth is, he's starting to understand strategy through playing chess. It's interesting to see him play this and be, kind of looking at what his next move might be, as opposed to just the rolling and counting off, rolling in the candy land or Chutes and Ladders. I've been working on the game probably a year and a half. I've been a board game guy for as long as I can remember. We always played board games. I like games that are pretty straightforward, but you can drill down into some strategy to work between the lines of the rules a little bit. When I heard that I was in the final 16, or the Sweet 16, as I like to refer to myself and the rest, I went to Disneyland to celebrate. Not really, but I was really excited.
All right, Steve, thanks so much for coming. Tell us about What the Flock.
All right, What the Flock is a bird board game, and it's pretty simple. It's a kind of a gateway abstract. The rules are pretty light. And it's a grid that is an abstract tree, and everybody gets 6 birds of 6 species. There's cardinal, budgie, oriole, martin, finch, and jay, and they're different colors. The object of the game is to get 4 of your birds in either a square or a line, like a continuous line along the branch lines. Meanwhile, everybody else is trying to do the exact same thing. The way you get the birds into the tree is by rolling 2 10-sided dice for the larger 9x9 grid for 3 to 6 players, or the smaller 7x7 grid for 2 or 3 players. When you roll a 0 on the black die, you put a non-player character, crow, into play, or you may, and that goes on the board at that coordinate. When you roll a 0 on the other die, you'll play a hawk. So it brings me to the mechanic of pecking order, which is how you resolve conflicts in the tree. There's a diagram that shows each bird has pecking order over another bird around the wheel, or the next played bird. So if one's not played, you skip. And then the crow in the center has pecking order over everybody. Anytime you roll a coordinate that's occupied, if you have pecking order over that bird, you can displace that bird. So that player then slides their bird along a branch and can also displace other birds if they have pecking order over them. So it can unleash this, restructuring of the board as it happens. The hawk plays on the X's between the coordinates. So when you play a hawk, that goes in the center, and all the birds on the adjacent spots are displaced and have to slide along. If they can't move, if you don't have pecking order over that next bird, then that bird has to fly out of the tree, and you have to re-roll, or your next turn you can roll that bird back into the tree. The other thing, to introduce a little strategy, is there are 7 cards that each player gets to use during their turn if they choose to, which adds some alternate methods of flock blocking your opponents or getting yourself closer to the win. The only other thing, mechanically speaking, is since there are normally 2 coordinates for every die roll, but when you roll doubles, there's only 1. The bonus for rolling doubles is you get to pick up the top discarded card and then go through the motions of playing a bird into the tree or playing a card. That's it in a nutshell.
The thing I enjoy most about playing What the Flock is very simple: innuendo. Words that I've never dreamed of being associated with birds. So mother flocker, that was the easy one. Go flock yourself. Your beak, my tail feathers, and then they tend to go down from there.
So, Steve, I'm really impressed by like just the quality of the prototype, and it seems like the idea is really tight, and there's a lot of complexity there. Can you tell us a little bit about how far you are in the development and what kind of work you've had to do to get it to this level of quality?
I've been working on it for a couple years, and the biggest thing was some sage advice from friends to get it away from my family and friends and get it play tested. And I think the two biggest things that were kind of hounding me, I finally resolved and got good response on those. I won't tell you what they are.
What would you say is the typical time to resolve one turn, and then what's the total play time for the game?
It transitions. I think early game, it's pretty quick, 10 seconds. I think as the game gets going and the more players there are, I mean, I've seen, people really kind of reading through their cards and, the chess moves. If I do this, this is going to happen. What's he going to do? What's she going to do? And that can, go to a minute or longer, and that's when, the innuendo starts. Where people start heckling, and so it can be really fun and interactive. I think the overall game takes 15 minutes, for short games, and 30 minutes or 40 minutes for bigger 6-player games.
Do you find that there's a lot of handling time for the shuffling of the birds, especially in the late game?
In a 6-player game, there can be a little reorganization, but not as much as I thought. But usually it's only 4 or 5 moves at the most when either a hawk comes in or a crow, and then people have to either reorganize or they have to get their bird out.
Can you tell us a little bit about the materials in the prototype? I'm especially interested in the wooden birds, like how you made them, if that's what you're thinking about for the final version of the game.
These, I was using wooden spools for the original prototype, and I would have to start, imagine these are birds. And then people would kind of sit back in their chair and be like, no. So I have access to a laser cutter, so I designed birds, printed cut a bunch of them out, sat around with Easter food coloring and vinegar to color, so they're earth friendly. But I've talked about and investigated everything from die-cut cardboard to do the exact same fit, to little wooden pawns with beaks, to plastic pieces with a little more personality.
So each player gets a set of 7 cards, and that's what they get, and
they're the same for each player.
And they can play it you're sort of choosing an order to play it in, with the possibility if you roll doubles to get one of those cards back.
You'll hold your hand and you discard in front of you. If you roll doubles, the first thing you do is you pick up that top card, and usually everybody knows what that was, but as the game goes on and gets more complex and people get into their own heads about strategy, they start forgetting what's been played and what hasn't been played.
In people that have played the game a lot, do you see that they get better at remembering this, and that affects the course of the game, remembering what your opponents have in high-level play?
Absolutely. I think the rules are simple enough, they're clear enough that people can really inject a lot of strategy. So my son, who I actually designed this game for because all the other games that I have were too complex for him, he loves chess, and I see him kind of starting to play out the moves and looking through his cards to see if he does this. And I think other people have started realizing, what's been played, and knowing that if they do this, then I'm going to play that card where I can move 2 of my birds. So I think it gets pretty heady at a certain point, which is fun.
What has people's reaction been to the coordinate system? It's a big jump from rolling 2 dice and saying this black die is the tens column, and how have people reacted to that?
It was a little tough for people to get the grid, the 2-number system. I couldn't figure out a really clear way to make the black lines and the gray lines, or the red lines and the blue lines. So it finally dawned on me that I just assign the numbers to each point, 34 and 43. And that has sped that up quite a bit to where it's not a conversation, and it didn't come up on my last play testing.
How do you picture this packaged?
Small box, you know, something unique. And I've also played with the idea of it having, being kind of a cloth or similar to the play mats for card games that would be a double-sided and would roll or fold without any, you know, creases or anything.
I was curious how final the art was on the board and on the cards.
It's not.
It's not.
It's not at
Not
all.
at all.
In fact, I need somebody else's eyes and somebody else's paintbrush, I think, to finalize it. The character, I wanted to make the birds cute and attractive. So I think the final design, that's going to be something that's necessary when they see these pieces. People say, whoa, what is that?
I mean, it's a clever design with the 2 bits too. It makes it easier to manufacture.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah,
and
just
package in one
rotate.
sheet, stick them together.
Yep.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Thank you so much. We're going to kick you out and hold on to your prototype just for a few minutes so we can talk about it. And we'll see you back in just a few minutes.
Great. Thank you.
All right.
The biggest challenges I found were when you play test games with your friends or family, they all love it, and they always will. So the biggest challenge was getting off the stump where people were saying, hey, if you really want to play test this game, you got to play test it with strangers, and then having feedback come back to me that I hadn't heard before, or challenges or disappointments or things that weren't working that I had to accept, and then realize that that was how you go past having a game that only your friends and family likes to a game that could potentially be sold, you know, in stores.
All right, judges, you want to come up and take a look at the prototype here? Definitely, I think he nailed an important part of this, which is the birds have to be fun to play with. Like this game definitely profits from having like a toy-like kind of feel to it.
This game is clearly aimed at me. It's a coordinate grid system that's some sort of puzzle game, but it's got some sort of randomness going on, and it's absolutely adorable, right? I mean, like, so I think it hits everything I want in the game he designed. Conceptually, I like it. I don't know exactly how things hitting each other in this game cause a cascade of effects. I don't actually know what that does.
Turn order would really kind of affect this. For some reason, we're like, I know I can always push your stuff and I always go after you. This is always going to set me up for kind of a victory. And I know that he will always push me, then I'm going to set up in a certain way.
Yeah, it kind of feels like Vampire: The Eternal Struggle, the card game, where you always attack to your left. It kind of strikes me that it might be interesting to have players don't get to pick their color. They are assigned their color based on where they sit, and the person who's in the lowest or highest or something like that, they're the ones who actually start the play.
It's not about winning in the pecking order. It's about having your bird slid. And quite often your bird is not in a place where you want it. So if you are down the pecking order, sometimes that's very, very helpful. Your turn order point might be valid, but I don't think it's like valid in poker.
Mike, you were saying this game would appeal to you. What sort of analysis paralysis you might get when you're looking at all the different contingencies?
Right.
And having to calculate the cascades for doing it.
I didn't necessarily mean that as a compliment.
Any production concerns or thoughts you have on making this? Is it possible to do in our budget?
So it really is it's a big question to me on the manufacturing point. He's got a lot of options that he threw out there.
What is your concern? I'm trying to visualize it. What exactly is your concern about the birds themselves?
Well, if we do the birds out of wood like this, it's probably not a concern. This is probably pretty simple. Plastic, I worry about the mold. I mean, I wouldn't want to use something that's already existing. You know, you'd want to use something completely new. I'd price out the mold. But the other thing he was talking about was maybe doing a fabric board. That could be an interesting thing. I mean, it could be done on a plastic stock, and it could still fold. It could be done on a regular board stock. It could still fold. You know, there's a lot of options.
Cool.
So
my final thought is that Flock Block is a way better name for this than What the Flock.
Yes.
And with
Flock
with that, we are now out of time for judging. All right.
Well, if I don't succeed in this competition, I think everybody probably says Kickstarter, so that's an option. But I've already had some good feedback here from people who want to talk about the game a little more and me to send prototypes to them. So selling the game would be great. I really want to get one off the ground to continue working on the other ones that are kind of half-baked in my studio right now that I can't seem to get moving until I get what the flock out of the nest. Sorry, I couldn't help it.